Hey everyone, this is Fabio and welcome back. I'm in Bristol actually. You can see the different scenery. I'm visiting my brother for a couple of days, and this is a video response. Love doing this to my good buddy Majora, and to his last video, Storytime, what got him into RPGs. And naturally, this is a very like nostalgic and awesome topic to me since, as you know, I am a big RPG fanatic. And I've been an RPG fanatic for a long time. RPGs have always been part of my gaming life since I can remember, basically. So this might be interesting, I think, to look exactly at what got me into my favorite genre of gaming. And it all started basically when I was very young. And I kind of mentioned vaguely the story before, but I think it could be interesting to tell it again and going into some details because it's worth it. I think it's interesting. Um, back, we're to go back to the early to mid, to, let's say to the early 90s. Um, when I was really starting to get into video games, of course, so we're talking about the years before, between 1990, 1995, basically, as I said, the first half of the 90s. And also at the time, I was starting to get into video games um, as I got my NES with some games, but also um, like 16-bit consoles were starting to spread among my friends. I remember like people having Super Nintendos and something like that. So just to give you an idea of the timing. As a kid, I've always been very into role playing in my adventures, meaning I love, for example, reading about um, like knights and fantasy or science fiction adventures in general. I always had this love for adventure as a kid. Like when I was not playing video games, um, basically I went outside and like basically behind my house in Italy there is like a massive woods where I always went to play, explore the explore it, and basically imagining that I was living one of the adventures I was reading into my books or in my early video games. I still remember, for example, like drawing maps of these books and put them into the oven in order to make the paper more yellowish. It was amazing. Um, then I like hid the maps away somewhere in the house, and oh, I found an ancient map or something like that. But a big part of that was also due to my love for the Telltale books. I absolutely loved those as a kid. Again, mainly for the idea of reading these adventures in fantasy, medieval war, but also I remember some set in post-apocalyptic world. I was already, you can tell, I was already getting into things I love now, and reading those books, it also like gave me a first experience of role playing. So creating my own character, leveling up, fighting monsters, living these weird adventures that were very different from other more traditional, let's say, books. And I also, as I said before, at the same time was getting into video games. All of this to give you a perspective of what happened when I think probably it was 1994, 1995, I played my first real RPG. And if you know me, you probably expect me to say it was some sort of JRPG because those are my games actually, but no, not this time. On My first ever RPG was actually a Western RPG. It was a game from the Ultima series. Now I cannot remember which one. I think it was either Ultima 6 or Ultima 8. One of those. I remember those two, those two. It might have been Ultima 8, maybe. Um, so I remember like some of my brother's friends, since they were a bit older than me, they brought all this game, which was for PC, not for the NES, which was my go-to system. Basically, I don't remember if I might already have a Super Nintendo as well. Actually, I'm pretty sure, given the time. But I remember um, that this guy brought this game saying, "Oh, this is an amazing adventure. You create your own character in this medieval world. You explore this world, you fight monsters." And I was there like listening, my ear getting bigger and bigger because I was saying, "Oh, what?" It was all the things I love about basically to do, like imagining and living these great adventures. So basically, we start playing the game, and of course, like given the time, it's all on floppy disks. I vividly remember that it wasn't on CDs yet. So with all these floppy disks and all of this with a PC that wasn't very good, it was not at all, but the game worked. So we played, and after a while, I wasn't allowed to play or something. I was too young or something. No, 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 this is not for you. You can only watch. Then as soon as like left, basically that same night, I start playing it. I was like, oh wow, I cannot wait to play Ultima, to live this amazing role-playing adventure, blah blah blah. I start playing it, and I didn't like it at all. I thought, I mean, what is this? This is shit. This is garbage. I didn't understand what I was supposed to do. I didn't understand where I was supposed to go. I didn't get the game. I thought it was like very clunky, the way you control the character. I didn't like combat. I didn't like it. So that was my first experience with RPGs, which I find it ironic that now it's my favorite genre, and I hate the first RPG I played. That would have been motivation for me to like just abandon the genre. However, something happened. You might say it was something stupid, like was fate that I had to be drawn to RPGs. And what happened is that a friend of mine, so my same age, had a different console. Basically, at the time, uh, myself and all of my friends, we started with video games with the NES. All of us, I remember, all of us, we were Nintendo kids. Maybe someone was more focused on PC or something like that, but I didn't know anyone who had Sega consoles. One of us, however, decided, I don't know, maybe it just wanted to be original or not part uh, of the herd, and he moved from the NES to the Sega Genesis. Um, and that was shocking because we felt kind of betrayed. Like, how can you betray Nintendo? How could you do it? But I remember going to his place one day, and I was actually curious about the Genesis because it's like this different machine that I never ever saw it. I'm pretty sure it's never going to be as good as Super Nintendo. I couldn't even fathom something like that. However, we started to play some games here and there. I suppose maybe we play Sonic or something, and I was like, oh, oh, this is pretty cool actually. This is not bad. And then something happened. I don't remember if he bought it or rented. Maybe he bought it. Maybe. Um, a certain game called Fantasy Star 2. And like he showed it to me. It's like, oh, this game Fantasy Star 2 is like, what is it? Because also at the time I didn't read magazines. Like before the PlayStation 1 era, I really didn't. I'm not really. I was starting to get into some gaming magazines, but not for console. They were just general gaming magazines. I remember like the first one I was reading were about PC games. So um, So I didn't know what this game was. I have no idea what Phantasy Star was. So we popped it in, started playing it, and I fell in love with it at the moment. There was one of those moments when something clicked instantly. I love like the music, like the opening screen with the two red women and the planet uh, appear on the screen with that amazing music. I remember I really liked the music in the beginning, and then like um, the game starts like, and I remember I absolutely loved the graphics. That's um, anime style of like very cartoonish kind of graphics to me at the time. Looking at like the the cutscenes or dialogues, it looked like a very anime game because again, at the time I had no idea what JRPGs were. So this was my first um, experience with one, and what an experience, I have to say. We started controlling the game, which felt so much smoother than Ultima because I remember like, oh, this is. I think he said like this is supposed to be or like something like an RPG or something. It's like, oh, I hope it's not like Ultima. It wasn't. I mean, it was much more smoother. I love the music, and the moment I remember when everything became clear to me, you might say, the moment it's when we left the first town and you are in the open world and that music started, the overworld music of Phantasy Star 2 started, and we moved and started exploring. I was like, this is awesome actually. It's much more intuitive, it's easier when the music is fantastic, it looks great, and we start exploring. I think we died every 2 seconds because, like all old school RPGs, Phantasy Star 2 is no exception. You move very slowly and get into fights every 2 seconds. Like for example, the first like 5 times we didn't know even how to like switch Nay's commands to just like do nothing to attack or something like that. And I remember we played for about 2 or 3 hours that afternoon because we were hooked for some reason. There were other couple of games or something, but to say no, we don't care. Let's focus on this. We have to finish this game. We didn't realize what kind of a behemoth of a game we had by our hands. So we keep playing and playing. And I think by the end of the afternoon, I think we reached the first dungeon. Like I think it's called Shure. And again, we really struggled because we were mesmerized the fact that this was like a huge world. We kept going and going, barely surviving. We reached the first town. It was like, oh wow, there's another town. You start to talk with other like NPCs and something. We were like kept exploring. It was such a, again, I don't want to sound too dramatic, but such a life-changing experience. It's like, okay, I remember like coming back home that evening. I was like, okay, Ultima was not a good experience, but I've experienced something special today. I love these kind of games. I want to play more like Phantasy Star 2. And of course, I didn't for years, basically, because on the Super Nintendo in Europe, since, as you know, I'm from Italy, on the Super Nintendo we had nothing. Or at least I didn't know about RPGs on the Super Nintendo. And with the fact that I couldn't afford to buy games that often, basically, I think I didn't have any on the Super Nintendo. And it was really with the PlayStation 1 that I really started to sink my teeth into RPGs, and especially JRPGs, because also at the time I was getting like by the early 90s, I was really, by the early to mid 90s, I was really getting into anime. That really helped. So I started to really looking for these Japanese games, and especially I wanted to know more about Japanese RPGs. And it all started thanks to Phantasy Star 2. Now, naturally, with the PlayStation 1, that's where that was a religion experience on its own when I started to get into games like Breath of Fire, Legend of Dragoon, much later, of course, but I really like the idea to think that it all started negatively for me with RPGs, thanks to Ultima. But then, thanks to JRPGs, I really, really um, appreciated this format of gaming. And then also, I like through the years, I returned to Western RPGs and appreciate some of them. Like I really liked Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. I really got into Neverwinter Nights, Knights of the Old Republic, the Fallout games. So I'm not entirely biased, and I don't hate Western RPGs, but I always prefer Japanese RPGs, and especially naturally, my heart will always stay with turn-based Japanese RPGs. And as I said, I love the fact it starts with a very bad experience, but I didn't know what I had with Ultima. And then moved to Fantasy Star, although I was very skeptical at first. After I tried, I was hooked, and I say the rest is history. Since from that moment, I said, like, I was thinking about these kind of games. I wanted more of those games, and from that moment on, I was completely an addict. I wanted to play as many Japanese RPGs I can, and here we are, many years later, and I'm currently playing Japanese RPGs on my 3DS now, um, and it is, and I can say now it will always be my favorite genre, and it all started thanks to Fantasy Star 2. So that's my experience on how I got into RPG, and especially what game almost killed my, let's say, almost killed the genre for me, and then another one really salvaged that and transformed it into the I can say the core of my passion for games. So that's it. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Definitely check Majority's original video and his channel. Um, Let me know what, if you are into RPGs, what got you into it. Um, Share your experiences, and definitely check, as I said, the original video. Thanks so much again. I'll see you next time. Take care.